Welcome. You're listening to the Best of Investing on Talk 910. You know our show. It's where we present valuable information about real estate, the financial markets, and other economic business of the day. And for those of you listening for the first time, here's our format. A few guys sitting around a bar having drinks without the drinks, talking business with you, the audience listening in. I'm your host, Edward Brown. Mark Hanf is out today, but I'm pleased to have as my co-host, Robert Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. Our phone number is 888-912-1190. Write that number down, 888-912-1190, because you're going to use that number to answer the trivia questions for 3 vacations given away during each commercial break. That's right, we're giving away 9 vacations during this show. And today's trivia theme is miscellaneous trivia. You'll have to figure that one out.
I'm great at that one.
Okay, our website is bestofinvesting.com. Check us out on Facebook and YouTube by typing Best of Investing Radio Show. We're also on television, Comcast Channel 26 and AT&T Channel 99 on Saturdays at noon and Sundays at 6 p.m. Now, today's special guest is John Duran, and he's going to discuss how to make faster and better decisions about money. He's a nationally recognized financial expert, and he's going to explain how we can dramatically improve our financial lives. John Duran, I love that name. Welcome to the Best of Investing.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Okay. So go ahead, Robert. You're going to ask the first question.
Well, Joe, when you start talking about investing and things like that, one of the things that I've recognized both through my own experience in my career and also just personally has been that everybody has a money mindset, and it's very difficult for them to detach their beliefs about money from the truths about money. And I'm guessing that that is exactly what you deal with on a daily basis.
You know what? Hold on. Okay, can you try that one again?
I get you 5, and you started off 5, and then your sound just disappeared.
Okay, I'm sorry. Robert, ask that question again.
Sure. Joe, one of the things that I've found in my career and personally has been that we realize that we have a mindset about money. We have our own beliefs about that. We perceive those things to be true, and they kind of dictate everything we think about money and how we act about it. And yet, when you write a book on that topic and when you deal with that, you probably recognize something very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's that everyone treats money as if it's an intellectual exercise. But for reality, most of us make decisions with our hearts and with our own biases. Everyone is biased when it comes to money and has a perspective that they believe is true.
Right.
And don't almost never act in the right way because their biases and their own perception of truth overwhelms a rational and good decision. We see it all the time with people, that they often make decisions that actually sabotage their ability to actually have a really good financial life.
Right. And I see this come up time and again, not only on the bad side. You talk about sabotaging your financial life, but one of the things that I've recognized is my own belief system was created through watching, my parents and people who all did things best of intention, but the way they did them colored my thoughts about money. For example, my father grew up with Depression-era parents, and that thinking carries over to me, and that's what I perceive to be right. Whether or not that leads me to make the best financial decision or not is questionable.
Well, I can tell you that almost certainly it does not, because we know we've done a lot of work and we've had tens of thousands of people go through a very simple exercise to determine what drives and what affects their bias. And then people are either driven by fear,
right,
the way you're describing your parents, which means that your primary goal is to protect.
Right. And
so protectors, they're either driven by that or they're driven by a desire to enjoy life. We call them the pleasure seekers. Their primary goal is satisfaction and maximizing what they can do with their money and their time. Or they're commitment people whose primary goal is to look after the people they love.
Right.
And that lens affects every decision you make. If you're driven by fear, you're probably the kind of person that delays rewarding themselves, taking vacations. Certainly your parents were this way.
Right.
Take more than they needed to, didn't take the trips they could afford to take, lived in a house that was more modest than they could afford, really well prepared for retirement, really well,
right,
probably died with more money than they spent.
Right.
If your happiness, the exact opposite is true. So it very much colors your perspective and affects, candidly, not just your investing, but the way you live your life and why you work and how you work.
Correct.
So I was going to ask you there, Joe, what are the 3 money minds that drive us?
I mentioned them a little bit, and by the way, you can go online completely for free. If you go to Honest Conversations, ending with an S, .com, you can go online and actually go through an exercise we created. It's a game that asks you 7 random questions and will tell you, and then compare you to other people in your age and your sex.
Oh, interesting.
To say how you are, but you're either driven by fear, happiness, or commitment. People who have a happiness mindset, which is about 30% of the population, regardless of age,
Right.
their primary goal is to enjoy life. They tend to spend money very quickly, naturally optimistic that things will work out, often overspend, often underprepared for bad things happening.
Mm-hmm.
Fear money mind, the exact opposite. They tend to be overly pessimistic, over-prepare, agonize over decisions, and then you people who are more frivolous to be irresponsible.
Right.
And then the commitment money minds are people who sacrifice their own interests and their own needs to look after the people around them. Now, they all have really good attributes, and they all have a downside to them. So the number one secret to making great decisions is to understand your own natural bias.
Yeah.
How it might be actually hurting you rather than helping you.
You know, years ago I used to mountaineer quite a bit, and there was this saying that they used to use in alpinism that said the more stuff that you carry, the more likelihood you're going to need to use it.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and it kind of, what I take from you there is it's sort of like that with money too. You know, if you're leaning towards the pleasure seeker part of it, you may not be preparing for retirement, for example. But then again, you know, you may enjoy your life so much that opportunities present themselves that when you get to retirement, you've got other resources.
Yeah, because how do you balance that
Right,
out? You know,
right,
he
exactly.
who dies with the most toys wins. No, he who dies with the most toys still dies.
You're right.
You know?
Well, the interesting thing you have, of course, is that I'm married for 20-some years. I'm a fear money mind as well.
Uh-huh.
And my wife is a happiness and commitment money mind.
So
And
you
what
get a
that
balance.
means is that she has no trip that she isn't happy to take, no
Right.
party she isn't willing to host.
Yeah.
And I'm always thinking about how much is this going to cost?
Yeah.
Where's the money coming from?
You know, we're very similar. Except my wife tells me when I'm happy.
Well, let me address the topic of wives too, because one of the questions I had for you was how do you turn money-related arguments? You know, I see this all the time in my line of work. I do home finance, so often I'm dealing with one spouse or the other. But when I'm dealing with both spouses, sometimes what you find are there are very different approaches towards money. How do you advise people to have these conversations without them sort of devolving into arguments or fights even?
So you know, about 70% of the population is married to a spouse that has a different money mind
Interesting.
than you have,
Yeah.
which means that 70% of the population is going to have fights about money quite frequently
Right.
because you have a completely different lens on the same issue. So, for example, if a vacation comes up where somebody wants to refinance, let's say, in your
Yes.
world, the husband, let's say he's a happiness money mind, he's thinking about taking money out and buying a car or taking a trip. The wife is a fear money mind, she's thinking about saving the money,
Correct.
put the kids through college or do something that
Absolutely.
is in the future.
But I want to ask Rob a
The
quick.
thing you do is that you understand and have awareness and consciousness about your bias so that you
Right.
can adjust your decision making and incorporate all perspectives, because like everything in this world, you don't ever want to approach everything from an only fear perspective, because you will never,
Right,
you'll miss
right.
1,000 opportunities. You also don't want to approach everything with an overly optimistic view, because then you're going to end up chasing everything and succeeding in nothing.
So when I asked Rob a question, do you find most of the women want a fixed mortgage and the men want an adjustable? Because of the security, safety part?
That's a good question. Yeah, you know, there are some stereotypes, but women, men, no, it doesn't. I don't really pick that one up as much, but stereotypes definitely do exist in my profession.
And I will say, by the way, statistically, of the tens of thousands of people who've done this, there is no actual difference between men and women
Oh, there you go.
when it comes to fear and happiness. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
write about this in my book, The Money Code.
That's
There
that.
is no, our upbringings really shape.
Yeah, exactly.
Because nobody really talks openly and honestly about money growing up,
Right.
we only pick up bits and pieces about what our parents do and say, So if we grow up in an environment where our parents are always fighting about money, money is scary.
Right.
If we're in an
Right.
environment where both of our parents are fear money mind, we learn to be petrified about spending money. Or sometimes, in the same exact environment, people will grow up and say, well, my parents never learned to enjoy it. I'm going to spend my
gonna
life enjoying it.
Yeah.
I used to work for a guy who was the stereotype of an entrepreneur, and he talks about his dad working out of one of those sort of trailer containers, that had a door on it, and whatever, and he just went in the 180 degrees opposite direction.
Yeah.
Wow.
So our history really affects the way we think about it, and we don't concern ourselves too much. I'm not a therapist. What I do know
Right.
is that we've created a checklist that allows you, both individually and as a couple, to walk through 9 steps and very explicitly lay out for you how you should make decisions, how you should adjust for how you think about things, and make sure that you make the right trade-offs so that you don't have a fight. And one of the most important things when you're having a big, important financial discussion with a spouse or with a partner is to make sure that you are both unemotional in the discussion.
Good point.
Well, also, I think it's important to, Joe, I think it's
Mutually collectively and grateful for decision making.
Yeah, Joe, I think it's important to also know that you're on each other's side. You're on the same team,
yeah.
you
Good
know,
point,
but you're not against each other. I mean, we've had that kind of discussion before and say, listen, I'm not against you. I'm on your team.
Right.
You know, got to make a decision that works for both of us.
And I think that's what gets lost very often, because money is a reflection of our values, and the way we spend money is a reflection of our values. And so the reason it becomes so volatile so quickly is if your wife says, I want to have a party, and you think this is going to be expensive,
Right.
you feel perhaps like she's not having respect for your concerns, and she feels like you're not having respect for her concerns.
Wait a minute, so when
At the end
she...
of the day, everyone just wants to be happy. Everybody just wants to avoid pain. Everybody wants to take care of the people they love.
Well, hey,
That's the way
Joe,
we do it and prioritize it.
so when my wife makes filet mignon for herself and gives me cold cereal, should I take a hint from that? Does that mean anything?
I think she's saying that she likes you eating a little differently than she does.
Yeah, you know what,
That's why you wrote the book.
Yeah, that's a good spin on it. Okay, Joe John Duran, I like that.
Joe, fascinating stuff. I could listen to you talk about it all day.
Yeah. So how do people get a hold of your book?
It's in all the bookstores. It's in all the airports. It's a national bestseller, so it shouldn't be hard to find. It's certainly on Amazon. It's called The Money Code.
The Money Code.
And it's written as a parable. It's not a how-to book. It's written as a story of a person's voyage to finding a way to make better choices. I think people will find it really easy to read. I can tell you that it's been on the New York Times for quite a while. Maybe because I think it's written in a way that's very comprehensible, very easy to understand, but also really practical. So you'll get ideas right away that you can apply, and it'll take you about 3 hours to read it. So
do you promise that we won't fight about money anymore?
No, you'll fight, but you'll fight in a better way. But the good news is all the proceeds go to charity.
Good for you.
To help people make a better life for themselves.
And I think you touched on a really important thing, because I find this in my line of work. If you take financial information or advice or suggestions and you make them digestible and you make them accessible, I think that is probably the most important thing you can do, because a lot of people have those walls up about money like you talked about, and even the thought of reading about it more instills fear, and if you can break those walls down, I think you can reach people.
Well, here's the other thing is that, and I don't know if you have this in your book, but what happens if you hit the lottery? You're still going to have fights about money, right?
Oh, no, it'll actually be worse. You know, whether it's good news or bad news, any surprise will cause you to have more stress. Otherwise, if anyone wants to follow me on Twitter, I'm on Duran Money. I provide insights all the time about the way you should think about money. And if that's useful, it's on Twitter at Duran Money.
Very good.
Good stuff.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Joe.
You
Joe
too.
John Duran, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That was interesting. Okay, tell you what, we ran a little bit over, so we're going to go right to our first commercial break. Again, the theme is general or miscellaneous trivia. Ready for this?
Yes.
On the again, this is all over the map. That's why it's very miscellaneous here. On the TV show, the old TV show, The Odd Couple, what was the policeman's first name who was a friend of Oscar and Felix? Hint: Remember, he was the same guy who ended up playing Al after Arnold on Happy Days. Same guy.
Okay.
The first three call now, so we don't want his real name. We want the name of the character he portrayed. Yeah.
Character.
Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. On the old TV show The Odd Couple, what was the policeman's first name who was a friend of Oscar and Felix? And here's a hint. He was the same guy who ended up playing Al after Arnold on Happy Days. Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing will be right back. Well, welcome back to The Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with my co-host, Rob Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. When we cut to the first commercial break, we asked this trivia question. And again, the theme is miscellaneous trivia, because you never know where it's going to come from. On the old TV show The Odd Couple, remember that was with Jack Klugman and Tony Randall.
Yep.
What was
That I remember.
what was the policeman's first name, who was a friend of Oscar and Felix?
That I don't remember.
Okay, and the hint was it was the same guy, Al Molinari, who played
Okay.
Al on Happy Days after Arnold. You don't remember? Like, you ever watch the show?
Yeah, I remember it when I was a
Okay.
kid. I just
His name was Murray.
Okay.
Murray the policeman. Okay. So Rob, tell us what's going on. You got a couple of interesting articles.
Yeah, well, it's interesting times in the mortgage business, and there are a few things that I think are noteworthy, and one of them is that I read an article. It was talking about what areas of the country would essentially become unaffordable if interest rates went to even 6%.
Okay.
And the vast majority of them are right here in California. And a lot of them in the Bay Area. And I guess that shouldn't come to anyone's surprise that lives here, because we all know that the cost of living is high. But we also, for the most part, have enjoyed a fairly robust job market. So those two things need to stay in line. But this article is interesting because it talks about how an interest rate increase would impact the ability for people to buy into that market.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that there's some validity to that, but I also think that we need to be mindful of the fact that interest rates in the 5.5% and 6% range are not all that far off historical norms.
I know, but we've been talking about that for a long time now.
Yeah, and we have been at 3.5%, 4.5%, and to base the housing market payments off of that as prices escalate. And look, there's a silver lining to that too, because as prices go up, and we certainly saw this in 2013, a number of the articles I have here reference, for example, we're in Marin County, the median price of a Marin home soared 20% from $660,000 in 2012 to $795,000 in 2013. So, that enables what I like to call mobility in the market. When people have equity in their home, they can, if they have to, they can sell. If they get a better job offer, they can relocate. And when that stops happening, that system locks up, and we saw that happen in 2008, 2009, 10. So again, affordability of homes and affordability of money both play into that equation, and I think that what some people are looking for when they start talking about that is, what is the organic price point of a home in any area? And that's really hard to pin down. I would think that, if you look at that and you say, well, home prices should come down in a certain area, that doesn't happen easily with a lot of repercussions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. You know what? That kind of feeds right almost into our email that we had for you.
Oh,
here.
sure. Fire away.
Okay, so email we received. Here's a listener who says, I had a short sale 3 years ago. Is it again possible to qualify for a mortgage?
Yeah.
That's more typical now than it used to be, that question.
Well, you know what? The reality of it is it's 2014. And 3 years ago was 2011.
Yeah.
Probably 2010 for this caller. But this is one of the most common questions I see. I do a lot of, I respond to a lot of questions and answers on sites like Trulia and Active Rain and places like that, real estate, sites that aggregate information. And this one comes up, has got to be one of the most frequent questions that's asked. So now, if you had a short sale 3 years ago, you have a couple of options available to you. If you are looking to put down 20%, and I'll talk about that in a second, you could conceivably get back into the market with a conforming loan in 2 years if you've had a short sale. If you have less than that, let's say you have a 10% down payment, now you're looking at probably a 4-year waiting period. But before that came up, an FHA option would be available to you at 3 years. And that also applies to a foreclosure. FHA becomes available after 3 years. Now, one of the things to keep in mind with all of this is that none of these financial events, like our last caller we were talking about, they don't happen in a vacuum. So if you foreclose, what preceded that event? And what happened to your credit score in the process of that happening? And when was it finalized? Because you take some of the people that got hurt the worst in the downturn. There was a period of time that it was really rough. And if they decided to walk away, which was common back then because there was no hope of homes appreciating, and how quickly that has turned around. But back then, if you had asked people on the street, they would have told you this home is never going to be worth this again. And then here we are a few years later, and it's creeping back towards 2006 levels. But when you had that event happen, did you go late on your mortgage? Were you late on other things? What preceded that, and what has happened since? Have you saved enough money for a down payment? All of these things come into the
How much
equation.
of this is subjective versus regulations?
Regulations in what sense?
Well,
Just from
like
the lender?
yeah, where the lender says, "Listen, by law, I'm not allowed
Oh,
to
yeah.
because of Dodd-Frank and all that."
No, Dodd-Frank doesn't touch on any of that.
Okay.
Dodd-Frank is more focused on the ability to pay the new loan back. But in terms of these guidelines, these are fairly well entrenched in Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac guidelines, so the government-sponsored entities, and also in FHA's guidelines. So, and they've been in place. Now, some investors, some lenders will overlay that, is what we call it, meaning Fannie might say that you can get back in at 2 years, but some investor, whatever, Chase, Wells Fargo might say, no, for us it's 3 or 4, because we don't want to delve into that segment of the market.
But now you're with RPM.
I'm with RPM, so we have various investors, and that's why our ability to find a fit, if you've got a client in this situation, is greater than if it's a single entity. We have a jumbo investor, for example, that will allow a jumbo borrower to go back in 3 years after a short sale. Unheard of.
And when you say you have a jumbo investor, I assume
Yeah.
he doesn't weigh more than 300 pounds. But an investor? I mean, a single person or
No, that's an
corporation?
institution. Yeah, an institution. On the jumbo side, it's probably a Wall Street firm that is looking for yield. Yeah, they're probably a big, for example, a Barclays or a Goldman Sachs or something like that. And investor also applies towards large banks as well. So we have some of them that will lend.
They don't resell that?
A lot of the jumbo stuff is going to be held. Yeah, it's
And
portfolio.
they're willing to invest at 5.5% for 30 years, or
Yeah, even better than that. Even better than that. I mean, again, if you're talking about coming back from a short sale, let's get something straight. If you're talking about coming back from a short sale or a foreclosure, this is not the kind of an application that you want to send over to a call center and you want to hope that it gets done. These are going to be complex, documenting what happened, why it happened, and why it won't happen again.
Yeah.
So you're really going to
I
need...
promise to be good this time.
Right, you really need an advocate to shepherd you through this process and work with a bank or an investor that will make the loan. And as a loan officer, it's my responsibility to understand the guidelines and know how we can best present your case for approval when you have a situation like that. But you can get back in. The time periods will vary, as long as 7 years in some cases and for some programs, and as short as just 1 year in others.
What about a bankruptcy?
Yeah, BK is a great example. A Chapter 13, if you've been paying back the arrangement on the 13 and you have a 1 year payment history on that, you can get back into a loan.
Wow.
Yeah, as short as 1 year with an FHA loan.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It can be pretty lenient on that.
So I'm the audience listening, and I'm hearing all this great stuff, and I'm waiting. Come on, who is this guy we're talking to, and how do we get a hold of him?
Well, great. No, I'd be happy to help. Again, these are not necessarily easy loans to get done, but certainly we're happy to help with them, and no cost or obligation.
Robert Spinoza.
Thank you.
Okay, and before we cut to our second commercial break here, actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and cut to the second commercial break. All right. Again, the theme is miscellaneous trivia. What household item is represented by the chemical symbol NaCl? All right. The first 3 callers with the correct answer win a free 3-day, 2-night stay at the Lighthouse. Do you know the answer to
I
this?
do know the
You
answer.
do know.
Come
Okay,
on.
because I was going to say sodium chloride. With Na is sodium and Cl is chloride. 888-912-1190 to answer this question. What household item is represented by the chemical symbol? Remember the old periodic table of elements? I remember there's my chemistry coming back at me. The symbol is NaCl. Don't touch that dial. Make sure that you leave your name and your email address when you call our 888-912-1190 number to answer that question. Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing. We'll be right back. Mr. Kramer, you know that one?
No, not even, don't
But
have.
hold on, don't answer it yet, Mr.
That's all
Spinoza. And away we go. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host. Mark Hanf is off today, but we have our other famous co-host, Robert Spinoza of RPM Mortgage. When we cut to the second commercial break, again, the theme is miscellaneous trivia. What household item is represented by the chemical symbol NaCl?
Table salt.
Table salt, very good. Mr. Chemist over here, I like that.
I think that was the only question I got right in all of chemistry class.
Really? I used to remember the halogens. For some reason, only one test I did well in chemistry. The rest of it, not so good.
Argon?
I don't know.
Oh, come on. That's your new halogens.
I forgot them all.
Neon? I don't know.
So, one quick thing I wanted to bring up here. Have you heard about these, the new scam that's going around, this one ring phone?
No.
Okay.
No.
So here's what happens. You get a phone call,
Yeah.
and they just quickly hang up. So it says that you missed a call.
Okay.
You don't recognize the phone number, so what do? You call them back. Well, what ends up happening is that you end up generally charged almost $20 in an international call fee up front plus $9 more per minute for the, quote, unwanted service. Sometimes what happens is you're calling an adult line or,
Right.
or some other thing.
But if it's an international number, do you see that on your phone then? when you
Well,
call
the
it
thing
back?
is, here they said the numbers with area codes 268, 809, 876, 284, and 473
Wow.
seem to be the major ones.
Yeah.
And I mean, ordinarily, don't they usually have like 011 or something like that?
Yeah,
But not in
you
this
would think
case.
so.
They got a way to get in your phone and kind of make things kind of squirrely.
You know what's interesting about that? There's an app that you can use. Some people in sales use it. It's funny. I had just heard about it, and people in my industry use it as well. It's called Sly Dial. You know about this?
No.
So you can pay. I believe you can pay for the service, but then if you if you dial someone's mobile number, it will go directly to voicemail. So if you think about that from a sales perspective, instead of possibly facing a cold scenario where you call in and the person doesn't want to talk to you, you can then leave them a message which is scripted and very precise, and then see if they respond back. But it's kind of
Yeah.
interesting. I don't
But a lot
really,
of times, I get that at home sometimes, and as soon as I hear it,
I don't particularly think it's my cup of tea, but it's interesting that it's getting you to call back kind of thing.
Yeah,
It's the
exactly.
same
That's the
thing
whole
on Etsy,
idea.
right?
Yeah. So in fact, it's funny. We had this a few years ago. A country called Gambia that I'd never
Yeah,
even heard
yeah.
of in Africa.
Yeah.
Totaled up, I think, $100,000 worth of calls on us, or something ridiculous.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hello, phone company. Try calling us. See if it's us. Anyway. So I wanted to before we get into your next article there. Mark's not here today, but he and I met with Gil Gross. Talk 910 on our station here in the afternoon. And Gil's going to kind of do some promotions for us because it's really interesting. Last week or week before, Gil had mentioned on the show that he knew of somebody or heard the story about this guy who had excellent credit, good income. I mean, everything was going perfect. But guess why he couldn't get a loan?
Don't know.
Because he changed from a W-2 employee to independent contractor.
Yeah.
He was in the same business,
Yeah.
making the same kind of income.
Death knell.
But he
Yeah.
hadn't been in
Yeah.
business in that, independence.
Yeah, I counsel
for more than
borrowers
2
on that
years.
all the time. If you are a W-2 employee, no matter how successful you are in that capacity, if you decide to strike out on your own, get a home loan before you do. Because what a lender will do in the vast majority of cases, now I know there are some exceptions to this, but vast majority of cases is you will need to document 2 years
Yeah.
of self-employed tax returns before they can average your income and then use it as qualifiable income.
Exactly. So here
Yeah.
you have a situation now where this guy puts money down,
Right.
non-refundable because he gets into contract, gets the home of his dreams,
Right.
and now he can't get a regular bank loan.
Yeah.
So a guy like that could call Mark
Yeah.
get a loan at, let's say 9.5, 10% interest, which is, terrible
Right,
for
for what he
the-
was looking for.
For what he was looking
Yeah.
for. And Mark would lend him the money, it's probably 65 or 70% loan to value, charge the guy 9.5, 10%.
Right.
And the guy would pay it back, Mark would probably put a minimum in there of maybe 3 months or 6
Right,
months.
right.
And then, it's a type of loan where it is bankable.
Yeah.
But not at that moment, only because,
Yeah.
because of the change in the, employment status.
This highlights something too that I wish our industry enjoyed a better reputation in this regard. But if you were thinking of buying a home and you had your financial wits about you, most people would approach maybe their CPA or their tax advisor, and they would say, hey, we're thinking about buying a home. Let's pencil out the tax consequences of doing this. And I think our industry can do a lot better job of getting in front of its clients and saying, if you guys are thinking about any big financial event in your life, give us a call. Give me
Yeah.
a call. Let's talk it through. Because if you're changing jobs or moving or anything like you just described, the implications with the lending restrictions as they are now can be severe. Now, years ago, that would have not been a problem. Why? Because that gentleman could have gotten a stated income loan.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and he would have been
Yeah.
fine, but those doors are shut, and they're
Yeah.
going to stay shut with the CFPB now for some time.
But can you imagine what an opportunity for Mark's company, Pacific Private Money, because he can go ahead and lend money
Yes.
at 10%.
And he's got a golden FICO borrower who's
Yeah,
going to pay it back.
that guy's going to
Right.
pay it back. So
Right.
the thing is, the reason I'm mentioning it is that a lot of times, people look and they say, gosh, I wish I could be the bank.
Right,
I want to be on
right.
that side of the table. Well, if you give Mark a call
Right.
at 415-883-2150 or go to his website, pacificprivatemoney.com, you can find out exactly how you can be on that side of the table and
Yeah.
earn a high rate of return with relatively low risk.
There are some borrowers that I talk to that they have reached their end of the rope with the process because they have something like that, and no matter where they turn, they get the same answer.
Yeah.
And that is one of those, that is a perfect example, a textbook example of a scenario that it just doesn't make sense. You wish the lending environment could provide a solution to a borrower like that, but right now those are hard to come by. Hopefully it'll free up. Yeah, of course you can take it to a private money lender, and that may be your best option.
Well, it's temporary because eventually
and
the
it-
person can refinance now with
Absolutely,
the typical
absolutely.
loan.
And I think very highly of Mark and the way he operates, and I think the solution that he can offer to people in those situations is about as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, so he gives a reasonable return
Yeah.
for the investor,
Right,
And then
right.
for the borrower, well, okay, so he's got to pay a little bit more, but it's a nice secured
Yeah.
loan and everything's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, now I've got an interesting question for you, and I don't know if you know the answer to this one. Let's say somebody comes to you for a loan, and they show you their tax return,
Right.
And their tax return qualifies them for a specific loan.
Yep.
And then they get the loan from you. 5 months later, 6 months later, or even a year later, they file
Amended return.
an amended return. There you go. You know what I was going to ask.
I didn't know what you were going to ask.
Okay,
but-
what is their obligation to go back? And let's say the amended return is, oops, I realized I overstated my income, or I have more expenses or whatever, and they get a refund from the government. What is their obligation to tell a bank?
Okay, everybody that works for the government, I need you to take that dial and turn it all the way to the left of the ear and click.
Like I said, I'm not advocating this
Okay.
at all. I am just curious.
I'm going to be honest with you here. I don't know. I never see that side of the business. So once your loan is closed, funded, packaged, and sold, presumably sold on the secondary market, whatever happens, happens. So you cannot filing an amended return. I suppose the lender would have recourse if they could prove intent. In other words, if they
But how would they even know?
yeah, and maybe you in your best, in all good faith, you didn't know either.
Sure.
And I'll give you another example of that. Let's say you use the amended return. Well, what does that do? That means their income was not sufficient to support the loan, presumably.
Yeah.
Same thing if they lost their job unexpectedly, right? I mean, they took the loan in good faith.
That's a very good point.
And
Yeah.
then circumstances change.
As long as they pay the loan,
As long
who
as
cares?
they pay the loan,
no harm,
right,
no foul, right?
Right. And you can look at your deed of trust to see specifically how the lender can treat that. But in a situation like that, I'm not usually privy to if something is found out with an amended return down the road.
Well, no, I mean,
would
once
say
you
that-
close the loan, you're kind of out of it at that point, right?
Pretty much. I mean, not really in the sense that we all have a national mortgage licensing system identifier that tracks all the way through to
Oh,
the life
wow.
of the loan.
Okay.
So they could come back and say, hey, why does this guy, all of his loans, all these people amend their returns? Now you got a real problem. You see what I'm
Yeah,
saying? So
yeah.
if lender ID, whatever, was all,
Yeah, does the IRS report that to?
how they would track it, I don't know, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna answer for you.
And again, as long as they're paying their mortgage, well, it's the same thing when people used to say, "Oh, this is my primary residence," to get a good rate.
Yeah,
and then they keep having 5 primary residences. You know?
Well, be careful there, because that's the number one,
Yeah.
instance of mortgage fraud, and you will get busted on that. And what they'll do on that is, there are companies that will go out there, if they think there's an issue with that, number
Yeah.
one, there are companies that will go out there and look to basically determine if the property's been owner occupied.
They're going to look in your mailbox illegally and make sure that there are PG&E bills in
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Hey, what are you doing looking at my mailbox?
Yeah, you don't want to do that one, and if I get a sense that a borrower is trying to disguise what will be an investment property as a primary, I'm out right there, because I don't want any part of having that come up. That's mortgage fraud A to Z.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to cut to our third and final commercial break again. Today's trivia theme is miscellaneous trivia. Again, this is I'm all over the board on this one. First we had the
My
odd
mind is
couple,
full of useless
right?
stuff.
The next question we had was chemistry, and this one is now the Beatles, right?
Oh, all right, I might be able to get
Okay.
some.
Paul McCartney wrote the Beatles song "Back in the USSR." Back in the USSR, remember that?
Yep.
Okay, who was the drummer? 912-1190. I had to have one easy question,
That's pretty
right?
easy.
Okay, that's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. Paul McCartney wrote the Beatles song "Back in the USSR." Who was the drummer? Make sure to include your name, email address, speak slowly, spell out your email one letter at a time. Don't touch that dial. When the Best of Investing comes right back, we're going to have some closing comments. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host. Mark Hoff is off today, but we have Rob Spinoza in the studio here as our co-host. When we cut to the third commercial break, and again, the theme is miscellaneous trivia. Again, we had the question on the Odd Couple, then on chemistry,
Yeah.
and now it's on the Beatles. Paul McCartney wrote the Beatles song "Back in the USSR." Who was the drummer? That's an easy one.
Pete Best.
No. Kramer, who was it?
Ringo Starr.
Ringo Starr.
Come on, you know the-
No.
It wasn't Ringo
It
Starr?
was Paul McCartney.
Oh, wow.
It's a trick, easy,
trick
hard
question.
question.
You know Pete Best, the Pete
Yeah,
Starr. Okay.
yeah,
all
he was the one before.
was a-
Actually, that would have been a good answer, but apparently, now this is the story I heard. Apparently, and no offense to Ringo,
Right.
but apparently he couldn't get the beat right.
Yeah.
And Paul McCartney says, "Get up, move over. I'm going to do
Okay.
it."
So he didn't quit of his own volition. He was kind of helped out the door.
That's the
All right.
story I heard. But apparently, Paul McCartney was the drummer on
Oh, wow.
Back in the USSR. I thought that
I
was
think
kinda
Eric
fun.
Clapton was a guitarist on "While My Guitar Gently Weeps." I think he played
Never
the
heard that
guitar
song.
Oh well,
Is that a Beatles song?
it's a Beatles song.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
"While My Guitar Gently Weeps." So George Harrison sang on it.
Now, him I've heard of.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, now here's just a question that I have for you.
All right.
Okay, someone comes in, wants a loan from RPM
Yeah.
Mortgage, because you're totally independent, basically,
Yep.
right? And for whatever reason, they don't qualify.
Mm-hmm.
Do you give them the axe?
I-
Shuffle them out the door? What do you do?
No, I really try and help borrowers with, okay, what's the issue? If it's something that is curable over time, you can give them a plan. So they can walk out of there thinking, okay, I can't borrow now, but I can if I do these things at a certain date in the future.
Okay.
I think our industry also does a poor job of that, in that we let too many people go their own way without the hope that they will someday be able to qualify for a mortgage.
Okay.
And so let's take the most common one where you'd have a credit blemish. Those are kind of
Yeah.
things we uncover. There are methods, there are things you can do that are free of charge that over time will restore your credit rating and enable you to get back in. If you're self-employed, we talked about that. You've got to establish a history of earnings.
Well, sometimes you'll work with a hard money lender like Mark,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
wait till the situation gets better, and then you can refinance them out.
You know, a
Kind of win-win.
savvy mortgage professional is going to be able to give you a roadmap on how to get qualified and not leave you in the cold. Yeah, absolutely.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I've seen people redeem 25,000 miles
for a ticket they could have bought on the shuttle for $39.
Oh, that's
now,
ridiculous.
Telling me something else, but I'm saving my miles for when the ticket's going to cost $800.
Absolutely.
Not $39.
Now, what about aren't there some websites where you can actually sell your miles? And how do the
Well,
airlines
you
feel
can,
about
but
that?
Tell you what, you're going to go to prison. Every frequent flyer program has the mileage police. They hang out on, guess what? Craigslist. They hang out on eBay, looking for people to sell miles. So I always tell people, miles have a real value when you use them, and there's nobody I know that has too many miles, including George Clooney. So what you want to do is forget about that. It's not worth the risk, if you will. And besides, you want to sell your miles where somebody's going to give you like 13 cents on the dollar of what they're worth. Now, save them, use them, give them. Send the in-laws away for the holidays.
Yeah,
or, hey,
in-laws.
you've got a favorite niece, send her to Europe for graduating from college. But don't let us go away. If nothing else, donate them to Make-A-Wish Foundation.
So, Randy, is there any way? What's one of the best ways to keep up on all the specials and changes going on in the frequent flyer industry?
Well, in the old days, depending on how old you were, I would say, well, ask the Three Stooges. Today, it's your three new friends. One's named Google, the other's named Facebook, and the third is named Twitter. Social media is actually where you find out stuff. And looking up best credit card rewards, how to redeem a seat, you're going to come across websites like forums, bulletin boards like milepoint.com, where frequent flyers get together and trade their best experience or advice on helping each other. But the key out there these days are bloggers. Bloggers are the smart guys because you don't have to wade through 800 pages of, well, you're wrong, and here's my experience. Bloggers really do research. So type up best credit card deals, blogger, and you'll find, and there's hundreds of blogs out there where people will give you advice, articles every day on here's the best credit card deals, here's the best way to get value out of your first class redemption, here's how to keep your miles from expiring. So social media is your friend. Remember, Google, Facebook, and Twitter, they're the new Three Stooges.
And let me ask you, that's funny. Have you found any? Hey, you insinuating? No, just dancing. Have you found any deals where it's been good to actually like purchase merchandise? Because sometimes I look at this stuff and it takes like 1 million miles to purchase a Pez dispenser.
Well, that's a good question. And for those, there's a lot of jadedness in frequent flyers. There's a lot of uppity-nosed people that have really burned out and they got millions of miles. And, of course, they would always say, I would never redeem, just to your point, my miles for merchandise that I could buy cheaper from Amazon. However, let's understand that the value of a mile is in the beholder. It's frankly like art. And, not everybody has 1 million miles, and frankly, not everybody's got $20,000 or $200,000 in their savings account or their checking account. So, honestly, it just depends on how it feels to you. If looking at merchandise and maybe you don't have a lot of money, you're in between jobs, especially the economy last couple of years, maybe it makes sense to trade your miles in for a putter, a tailor-made putter, or frankly a toaster. If that gives you value, and you feel good about it, then frankly, use your miles for that reason, but everybody has a different thing.
Well,
and it's like,
or like you said,
value when you see it.
and if you can't afford the 99 cents for the Apple Store one, and you're going to have miles that expire, then that's the way. Yeah, you do that for me.
I hate seeing somebody lose their miles.
No, I know that's ridiculous. So we have been talking, Randy Peterson. You've been awesome, giving us excellent advice. And this is Randy Peterson, who is now. What do you consider yourself with the? Because you're at Inside Flyer. Are you the?
I'm the editor. I started
Okay.
Inside Flyer magazine in 1986 when there was actually paper to print on. Today I operate a number of websites. I founded one called Flyer Talk. There's a website out there in bloggers. If you're really interested in bloggers, I've got 45 bloggers, and it's an area called boardingarea.com. And you'll find just absolutely the best advice. And as I say, bloggers really are great. You don't have to sift through a lot of threads. You read a single post, they're pretty good at what they do.
Great. Randy Peterson from Inside Flyer and Flyer Talk. Thank you very much for joining us on the Best of Investing.
All good. Now let me figure out the next number in a music song.
That's right. Okay, I tell you what, I'll ask this question, but don't answer it. Okay, you can hear what it is though. All right, here's the second commercial break, second trivia question. Prince sang a song that said he was going to party like it's what? Call 888-912-1190. That's 888-912-1190 to answer this question. Prince sang a song that said he was going to party like it's what? And again, the theme is numbers in songs. Don't touch that dial. The Best of Investing will be right back. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hoff, president of Pacific Private Money, California's fastest growing private mortgage investment firm. When we get to the second commercial break, by the way, that was an excellent topic we covered, frequent flyer miles.
Yeah, I mean, we are the best of investing, but investing includes saving money too.
Exactly, very good point. Okay, so the theme is numbers in songs, and here's the second commercial break trivia question. Prince sang a song that said he was going to party like it's what? 1623. Da-da-da-da-da. No, what was the answer to that?
1999.
1999. That
Seems
is
like
correct.
a decade ago.
More than that.
That's right.
15 years ago. Oh my gosh, 15 years
Remember
ago.
Y2K, the Y2K
Yes.
scare and everything? We were all going to hell and planes were going to fall out of the sky.
That's right. And
you know,
computers breaking and everything.
There
Sure.
were newscasters or radio personalities that lost their careers over that. They were betting the house on that happening.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
And also, I think there's some people who committed suicide thinking that it was going to be better to commit suicide than to worry that your computer was going to crash. Now, Mark, we received an email for you. It says, do hard money rates rise and fall as often as we see regular mortgage rates?
So that person was talking about hard money, or also called private money financing, which we talk a lot about on this show. My company, Pacific Private Money, is in the business of we got two kinds of clients. We're making loans to real estate investors who are no longer getting money from banks, because the banks pretty much stopped making loans to real estate investors who want to buy fix and flip property. They don't like banks don't like making short-term loans in the first place, and that's most flippers are paying those loans off in less than a year, oftentimes less than 6 months. And we also have clients that we serve who enjoy earning high yields on their savings. It's something we talk about a lot here at the Best of Investing. It's known as alternative investments. It's in the alternative investments strategy category, and that is known as trust deed investing or investing in our new mortgage pool product, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But so the question was, do hard money interest rates generally fluctuate like other rates? And the answer is that they really don't, because they're not. Bank rates are tied. For the most part, people believe that bank rates are tied to the 10-year. They tend to track and according with the 10-year Treasury note rate.
Or the prime rate?
Or the prime, yeah, well, and some
Used to
of
be.
the prime rate. It used to be, yeah, not so much anymore. But hard money rates really don't. Hard money rates are really a function of the appetite of investors to be willing to lend their private capital, their savings, to other people secured by real estate. And there are a lot of variables that go into that, and one of them is how safe do they feel about the real estate market today? Is it trending down? When it was trending down, it was really hard to close a hard money loan, and the ones that did close were generally very, very low loan to value, and the rates were high because there was fear. Now there is not so much fear. There's a belief that we are on a real estate recovery or rebound, and based on some local California prognosticators that I've listened to recently, whose opinions I respect and trust, there's belief that the next 3 to 5 years are looking really good for California real estate. So that we're not in a bubble, although I guess if you're trying to buy in San Francisco or Silicon Valley, you might argue that. But anyway, staying with this, the cost of a hard money or private money loan is really a function of the people's opinions of where real estate is going. So if we figure that we're feeling pretty good about real estate values, therefore we're feeling good about the security for the note, that's actually been impacting rates in a downward fashion. So I've actually seen hard money rates trending down
Is part of that because of the supply of capital?
It is, yes, it's due to the supply of capital, meaning more and more people who are frustrated with,
Yeah.
zero interest rates on their savings accounts or CDs and bonds, and even the scary nature of stocks and the way they go up, they go down. Are you really ahead? And they're looking at people who they see who are investing in real estate secured investment products, earning 8%, sometimes more year in and year out. And so anyway, more money has been coming into that, and that's allowed those of us in the business of loaning out that money the ability to sharpen our pencil and be a little bit more competitive. And so we're not quite a commodity yet, thank goodness, but single-digit rates were really rare in this business 5 years ago. Meaning, anything in the nines was like, oh, you're crazy, no way. 11-12% was the norm. But we're doing a lot of lending at 10, and some at 9.5, and some at 9, and depending on the loan to value and the situation of the borrower and how long they want the money. Actually, longer term money in the private lending realm is less expensive, you can get a lower rate than the short-term stuff. The short-term stuff, if you're going to flip a property in 6 months, what do you care really if it's 9, 9.5, 10, 10.5? What you care about is a fast close, because you're likely calling me because you got to close by next Friday, and if you're haggling over the rate, you're haggling over the wrong thing. You want to know that I'm going to perform for you, right?
Yep.
But if you're looking to, let's say you took out a hard money loan at 11% to buy a property that you remodeled. Now you got a tenant in there, and you're saying to yourself, well, I'm not going to sell this property. I'm going to hold it for rental income, and maybe it's going to go up in value the next 5 years. So now you're looking for 3 to 5 year financing, or maybe 7 to 10 year financing. It is available out there, and it's available. I've seen people quoting, or companies quoting, as low as 5.99 and 6.99. So call it 6 or 7% for. Now I haven't actually seen many of those close because I think some of those are teaser rates, but 7 or 8% money is not unheard of today for longer term rental income property refinancing. So for those of you who want to hold that long term, not so much, you're not going to get those to help you purchase, because they like bank financing, they take longer to close because they're underwritten more strictly, and the source of their funds are generally New York hedge funds that have been coming into California and looking to get higher yields by financing income property that the banks are still really not touching.
Well, remember, this used to be the best kept secret in investing.
The best kept, yeah, it used to be the best kept secret in investing. Well, it still is. I mean, if you think about the percentage of people who invest their capital, I actually wish I knew what the number is, because it's really not, there's not a lot of public information out there that, but it wouldn't surprise me if someone said to me, less than 2% of all the money that's basically in savings and retirement accounts right now is invested in a mortgage secured product earning
that wouldn't surprise me at
8%
all.
or better. And it's amazing how it's growing in popularity, but it's still a tiny fraction, because not a day goes by that my phone doesn't ring and someone says, I drove by and I've been seeing that sandwich board outside your store for the last several years saying 8%, and I keep thinking, well, that can't be right, and there's got to be a mistake. There's,
what's the catch? Or
what's the
too
catch?
risky or something?
Right. As Gil Gross has been saying. So, but
actually, though, Gil met with us.
Yeah.
And he really likes what we're doing. In fact, he's making plugs on the air now for us.
Yes, he is. Yeah, keep listening. It's a great. I know. I love the commercial. I love Gil too. He's got a great radio voice.
Yeah, he does.
But but where I was going with that is not a day goes by that someone doesn't call me and go, how are you doing that? And they, when I talk about mortgage investing, it's amazing how many people still have not heard of it and aren't familiar with it. In fact, I was at my bank today making a deposit. I had new investor sent me a check for $50,000 to invest in our fund. I walk it over to Wells Fargo because it's right next door, and it gives me a chance to kind of stretch my legs and get some fresh air. And, I know the guys over there. They all know when I'm walking in with a check. So how big is it this time, Mark? And so anyway, I'm talking to the guy behind the counter, and he's a young fellow. He's in his 20s, and turns out he had no idea, but he'd never heard of trustee investing or mortgage pool fund investing. So I sat there for 5 minutes and explained it to him, and he said,
Yeah, basically
I'm
say,
look at my 401k and see how
Yeah,
well it's doing.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, the first question is, okay, you understand that you work at the Wells Fargo Bank, yeah. What do you guys do? We make loans.
Right.
Really? Well, what happens when you guys can't make a loan or don't or choose not to make a loan for whatever reason? What is Mr. Borrower going to do?
Well, and, it was
Right.
very coincidental that I had this conversation with my Wells Fargo banker today, because I was driving my daughter to school this morning, and she has a test today, or had a test today for on
Time value of money?
Yeah, it was basically interest rates and such.
Really?
And so I had
Okay.
explained to her how it all worked. I said, well, banks take your deposits, pay you 1%, and lend it out for approximately 5%. I'm using round numbers.
Sure,
We know that
sure.
you're lucky to get 1% of
Yeah,
your savings,
yeah.
but they pay you 1, lend it out at 5. Well, we get money from our investors, and we pay them around 8% and lend it out at 10. And so, she thought, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. Now, when I actually said the same thing to my banker today, when he said, what is it that you actually do? He was surprised. He said, oh, you only make a 2-point spread
Yeah.
between 8 and 10. I said, well, we get a little bit more too. We charge origination points, which you guys might charge 1, and we'll charge 2 or 3.
Yeah. We're going to cut to the third and final commercial break, and here is the trivia question for this one. Three Dog Night claimed that this was the loneliest number. What number? Again, 888-912-1190. Make sure to include your name, your email address, speak slowly, spell out your email one letter at a time. Don't touch that dial. When we come back, Mark Hoff is going to give us specifics about exciting loans that he's recently funded. Welcome back to the Best of Investing. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Mark Hoff, president of Pacific Private Money. When we cut to the third and final commercial break, we ask this trivia question. Again, the theme is numbers in songs. The music group Three Dog Night claimed, my dad used to call them Three Dogs in the Night. Three Dog Night claimed that this was the loneliest number. What number is that, Mark?
1.
Is the loneliest number. That is
Yes.
correct. Here's an example of some of the loans you've actually done.
Rehabbers, flippers, real estate investors who have discovered their knack for buying property at good or great prices, adding value, and then reselling them for a profit. Now, some of these are homes that need a lot of remodeling, and that's in fact the contractors that we loan to. That's generally the ones they look for. They want to look for something that they can take down to the studs inside, and an older home that they can remodel with new electrical and plumbing, etc., and make it turnkey in an established neighborhood. And
All right, we're going to have to call it a day here. Here's our thoughts for the day. And Bob Hope said that he used to be called Rembrandt Hope in his boxing days because he spent so much time on the canvas. Tune in next week to The Best of Investing. We're going to be giving away 9 more free vacations for answering trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm Edward Brown, wishing you the best of investing. So long.